My neighbour is amazing. I couldn't even tell you the difference between a weed and a plant. My dad knows firsthand when I tried gardening at home. But thanks to my neighbour, the garden we share is always full of flowers. It's the same on the railway. When I'm at Emsey, the rose bushes on the platform give the most beautiful roses. It's common that passengers would often ask for cuttings, and if the rose bush has too many blooms, some do end up in vases in the station cafe. Either way, the flowers at Emsey never disappoint. But the railways has a closer relation to flowers than many may think, and the connection starts nearly 400 miles away from Yorkshire, in the county of Cornwall. In the Victorian era, the giving of daffodils from one to another was seen as a sign of friendship, appreciation and chivalry, and the use of flowers in the home has been used for thousands of years. Even ancient Egyptians had flowers in vases, seen in drawings, found in digs and in tombs. But flowers, once they're cut, perish very quickly, with some flowers only lasting a few short hours before they deteriorate, which makes flowers very difficult to transport. In the days before the railways, moving flowers was practically impossible. Flowers were chosen especially to be fragrant rather than to look pretty and to ensure freshness. The Netherlands were, and still are, the most prolific and market leader in flower production. But the flowers had to be hardy enough to make the sea journey. Many people would grow their own flowers and bring them into their homes. The larger the home, and the bigger, the more extravagant the gardens. In the early days of Victoria, her palace would be full of flower arrangements, and the upper classes, wishing to emulate, copied her to the best of their budgets. But London and the larger cities were running out of garden space, and travelling flowers in and out of the cities by horse and cart would take hours and even days. The county of Cornwall, especially the Tamar Valley, was considered one of the best flower producers in the country. The Cornish Peninsula and the Isles of Scilly produces some of the best daffodils and narcissus thanks to its warm, wet microclimates. The valley is also a bit of a sunshine trap. As soon as the sun hits the valley, it begins to warm. The flowers tend to bloom much earlier than anywhere else in the country. Cornwall was trying to ship the flowers out with the mail trains, but the mail trains were too slow to get the flowers to market on time, and the growers were complaining. The Great Western saw an opportunity. The daffodils were one of the more popular flowers, and the people of the inner cities loved them. They called it Cornwall's Golden Harvest, and the Great Western knew that they needed special treatment. Preparations started in earnest, and in 1899, special vans were created to take the precious cargo. The flowers were picked and transferred into boxes ready for the trains to take them to the big cities. 3 overnight specials ran every 75 minutes to take the flowers to market. Only the fastest expresses and the best engines were used. The crews were only allowed to run the train if they've had experience running fast routes and express operations. The Great Western gave the flowers the passenger-rated traffic notification, and it was one of the very few freights that occasionally took higher priority over passengers. And it really worked, so much so that the Great Western ran other routes where daffodil conditions were favourable, including the Ledbury and Gloucester Railway, known as Daffodil Line. It soon developed into a real industry, with millions of bunches being shipped daily, all picked overnight and all by hand. It was estimated that over 500 tonnes of flowers were shipped out of the county. In 1936, the flower service broke all records with an astounding 289,583 boxes moved. This surmounted to 1,000 tonnes from the Scilly Isles and Tamar Valley. The flowers even ran through the war. The government tried to stop the flower deliveries, and the daffodil beds were dug up to make way for crops to help the war effort. This led to some extreme methods to get the flowers out to the punters, including posting adverts in the paper, and 2 Newlyn locals being hauled in front of the magistrate, charged with misuse of ration coupons. The local Nick had discovered a few bunches smuggled on board a train, hidden in a crate of broccoli. The copper in charge traced the offending flowers back to their source, to a van. The driver and passenger were questioned, and it transpired that he was allowed to carry fish and empties, etc. It turns out it's the etc. bit on his licence that was being exploited by the driver's boss. The owner of the van was a nursery owner and was only too happy to smuggle a few flowers in with the produce. The driver and his mate were found innocent, and the owner got a bit of a slap on the wrist. But to keep the morale of the populace up, and to drive the crazy price of flowers down, it was decided to reinstall the service, and it was very much alive after the war. Some flower beds were never revived, and the flowers were replanted into the hedgerows. The flower deliveries boomed after the Big Four became one, and British Rail was only too happy to keep the deliveries moving. At its peak, over 10,000 people were employed to pick and pack the flowers across 90 farms. The decline in flower beds didn't seem to damper the industry, and shows were being held showcasing the rare and unusual breeds of flowers the Tamar Valley provided. Like the railway queens of old, flower queens stole the show. 200 million stems were picked and packed and sent to Covent Garden. But the 1960s saw change. The flowers were now competing with the powerhouse of the Netherlands. Air and road travel had eliminated the problem of getting the flowers to the UK, and they were being delivered as fresh as those from Cornwall. Many farms closed or turned away from flower production, and those that continued began to use improved roads and ferries to get the flowers to the markets. Beeching drew the final nail in the railway's coffin. His reshaping plan saw many rural lines in Cornwall close. While the line through the Tamar Valley was narrowly spared, only kept open until transport routes were improved, many towns and farms were cut off. That and Beeching's recommendation for freight of using containers meant the flowers moved from the rails, and slowly the flowers on the line whispered into history. Most of our flowers that we see on store-bought shelves now come from the Netherlands. They're usually flown in or come in on freight using the Eurotunnel, but a dozen or so farms do exist in Cornwall and the Isles. With the improved roads, all are now delivered by lorry in a matter of hours. Because of the climate, the vast majority of daffodils in the Tamar would now have passed. But for the rest of us, it's actually a perfect time to go out and see them. But don't discount the Tamar Valley just yet. There are other flowers to see. And as the days are getting longer and the weather's getting warmer, it is a great time to venture out.